Awesome. Since we're a little later starting today, are we trying to start like right at 11:06 again, or do y'all have a preference?
Oh, I'm okay with starting whenever.
Yeah.
Okay, me too. Great. Well, I guess we'll get started then. Awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's workshop on jupyterlab extensions. This is a part of our series where we're talking about jupyterlab extensions, right? But trying to uncover what some of the knowledge is from people who have built several or understanding things that may not be well documented about them and get some of that experience out to you. This week, we're going to be talking a little bit about the transition from 2.0 to 3.0 because jupyterlab 3.0. Wow, look, that's coming. What is that going to do, though, for extension writers, right? Like what you have to do to work on updating your own extensions? What should you know about making new? That'll be kind of the topic today. But first, I want to sit and introduce everyone. We're going to go through our typical introduction. So I'm going to ask them who they are, where they're located, and what open source projects that they work with, or what they care about with that. And I'm going to start with Eric today. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, Isabella. Hello, everyone. I am Eric. I am based in Belgium, and I am committer for jupyterlab. I have worked for the migration from the notebook server to the Jupyter server. So jupyterlab 3 works on a separated server, and I've been working a lot on that migration.
Awesome. That's a lot of work, I'm sure. Gonzalo, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Sure thing. Thanks, Isabella. Hey, everyone. So welcome. My name is Gonzalo Peña. I'm a software engineer at Quantsite. Been there for 2 years, and I recently joined the Jupyter Lab project as a core contributor. I have also helped in different projects in the past, including Spider, the Beware project, and Lecture. I just wanted to show you here, I have a small Raspberry Pi, which is another thing I'm using in one of the other projects I'm working on with some of the clients at Quantsite. So yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. Excited to have you. And Ani, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Hey guys, I'm Ani. I'm also a software developer or software engineer at Quantsite. I've been here for about a year, a little bit more than a year. And I work with a couple open source projects, but my background is mostly in consulting on computational projects. So I typically work on speedups or modeling. And I also work oftentimes with jupyterlab and writing a lot of extensions. So I'm super excited for today's workshop and to see the demonstrations that are done.
Awesome. And I'm Isabella Crusato-Floyd. I'm a UX UI designer with Quantsite Labs, and I mainly work with jupyterlab and Spider. I didn't introduce myself, I realized. And great, let's get started. But the main thing we want to do a check-in. We've been talking a little bit every time, like what kind of extensions are you currently working on? But why don't you just update? Like what have you been working on since we last spoke in that space? And Ani, why don't you get us started? We'll go reverse this time.
If you've been watching JupyterCon, there was a presentation given today on a product that is currently being put out by our company called QHub, which is a easy way to deploy and manage Jupyter Hub with additional features that we think are significantly beneficial to understanding how the ecosystem is going to work from an infrastructure perspective. So during that presentation, a colleague of mine, Chris Osterkov, gave a demonstration of something he wrote called Conda Store, which is a way to basically create and manage Conda environments. I have been working on writing a jupyterlab server extension for Conda Store so that jupyterlab itself has an interface to build Conda environments from. So that's, I guess, what I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. I've been using it mostly as a JupyterLab 2.0 extension, just because I want it to be immediately usable. But that being said, with a 3.0 release right around the corner, and this quirkshop being about the, I guess, migration of 2.0 extensions to 3.0 extensions, I'm super excited to kind of learn and take back what I learned from this and present a 3.0 and 2.0 extension in parallel, hopefully. So that's what I've been working on.
That's super exciting. Gonzalo, what have you been working on?
Not much. I took a week off last week, so since last time, I honestly haven't made much progress in the thing that I was working on, which was related to accessibility and adding a panel to JupyterLab to be able to have some tooling around accessibility that would allow to check accessibility and contrast checking, and also provide maybe a color view of different color blindness related illnesses, and how potentially how JupyterLab could look if applying those. Also, as Danny mentioned, this week and the past week, JupyterCon has been going on. I had a live talk yesterday on the topic of internationalization, and there was a panel this morning on a bit of that work. So that was very exciting. From our last quirkshop, I actually got very interested into solving one of the questions that we were asking, and it's like, it should be easy to provide a Vue.js application or extension. So actually, I got very curious, and I started also like playing around with Vue and see if I can get a toy app, a toy extension to showcase how we can also use Vue to develop extensions in JupyterLab. So that's kind of like my new project. While I procrastinate on the other one, I will be working on that one.
You've been working on a lot of stuff. That's no surprise you wanted to take a vacation. That's amazing. Eric, what have you been doing?
Well, last time I said I was working on a lab extension to make it more social. I mean, to push sales and to push outputs to Twitter. So you would take a screenshot and you would say, hey, this is what I'm doing now from JupyterLab. But I have not progressed at all on that. I've been pulled to some client activities. We need to make it to make JupyterLab more performant. We need to ensure that if you have a large notebook with a lot of cells, that notebook can be displayed fast. And what we have done is implementing a virtual notebook, and we have released not a JupyterLab 3, but in JupyterLab 2, we have a new 2.3 alpha, which provides that virtual notebook feature, which make it like 90% more fast for in some cases. As Annie and Gonzalo said, we also, we all were involved in JupyterCon, and I had also a live stream talk on RTC, which is a real-time collaboration feature for JupyterLab. So I've been quite involved to prepare and to work on the RTC activity for Jupyter.
That's great. Yeah, I'm super interested to see where all of that goes. So, but we're talking, you're all working on all these different projects here, but we're about to face a big release, and how is that going to change, right? That's going to be an adventure, and that's what we're here to discuss today, to hopefully make it a little smoother for everyone, or at least give you the information to help you out. So I know particularly Gonzalo and Eric working on this and working on the transition to 2.0 to 3.0 a little bit, from my understanding. What, I guess, do you foresee, like, highlight some big changes that you see coming to JupyterLab that are going to affect your day-to-day work? And I think that could be extensions, but I also think development in general would be helpful here. And Gonzalo, why don't you start this time?
Well, for 3.x, as we have discussed in previous workshops, is something that a lot of the users have been shouting out and like saying a lot of comments during the things I've attended at JupyterCon, the forums, and Twitter. Actually, a lot of users are really excited about the being able to install extensions as Python packages and not having to go through the whole rebuild process, which was the process for 2.x, which was not only a bit technical. I mean, if you just wanted to use the tool, it was not that straightforward, and it also takes time. So right now, basically, you just install something with the usual way you install Python packages, either using pip or conda, and right away after you relaunch jupyterlab or refresh, depending on the extension, you would get something that already works with the new system. So that has definitely been a game changer, and I have seen a lot of enthusiasm on different networks regarding this. So I think that's definitely one of the highlights. Uh, there's still work that needs to be there to make this experience actually enjoyable, so that people can keep installing these things from the extension manager right within jupyterlab. There is some work that needs to be done. Hopefully for 3.1, it's going to be there. So yeah, that's something that everyone should be looking forward and feel very excited if they have used extensions in the past. Definitely the new way of installing them is much easier and enjoyable.
So it sounds like that's easier from the user side, right? And that's where I think you're getting that enthusiasm you mentioned. But what would that mean for developing extensions? Is there anything that's going to change on that side with that?
Yes, there's definitely things that needed to change, and to be able to provide that experience, the jupyterlab development team is actually leveraging from new features that Webpack 5, I believe, is providing. So there was a workflow change in the whole code base that needed to be updated to be able to support this. Luckily for extension developers, there are several documentation that they can find in different places. We're currently, I think, Jeremy Tulip, one of the core developers, is also working right now on a migration from 2.x to 3.x extensions, which basically will include step-by-step of what you need to do to update your extension from 2 to 3. But on top of that, there is also some automated tooling regarding scripts that will make your life easy, so that you can run a script and have the script do most of the heavy lifting of things that need to be changed in your extensions so that it's now 3.x compatible. And that would hopefully provide a very also simple way for extension developers, with a few caveats depending on how complex the extension is, or if it's using a server-side extension as well. Yeah, probably I'm talking too much, and I think Eric will do an amazing demo of this at some point today. So yeah, back to you, Eric.
Yeah, so indeed, I'm going to show you step by step how you can build an extension in jupyterlab 3. I'm going to point also to the remaining doc we need to write. I was in contact with Jeremy today, and I have some to-dos for tomorrow to finalize those actions. I'm going to also show you that we still have some work to do to release. For example, the extension manager needs to be updated, but I will show you that. Maybe if I can move to another feature that jupyterlab 3 provides is what I said in the introduction, is the move to the Jupyter server. So luckily, it is transparent to the user, but in another way, we spend a lot of time without real, I would say, value to the user in first instance. So we made it on purpose to be transparent, so the user does not see that we move from notebook to server. And it's a lot of work, but I think it's a good foundation to build on top. And what it means is that with a single server, what you can do is running different what we call, well, server extensions, which is not the jupyterlab extensions. It's the same name, but it's something completely different. And jupyterlab is an extension for Jupyter server. Just like the notebook can be an extension the classic notebook can be an extension to Jupyter Server, just like Voila or NT React could be extension to Jupyter Server. So you could run as many front ends as you want, and on the same server. And it's very useful if you look at Jupyter Hub, for example, which spawns a server for a user, and that user could have any front end. So this is what jupyterlab provides. It's completely transparent to the user. A server extension developed in jupyterlab 2 is taken over in a transparent way. So we can migrate all the ecosystem very easily, but for the future, it's a very strong foundation.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a lot about that. And also it's easier, right, on maintenance, right? You're talking a little bit about the users may not notice it, and it took a ton of development work to get here, but also that means then one piece to maintain to support all these front ends, right? Still all the different front ends, but instead of, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's really
I
good
think
info.
also the value is that we can release any Jupyter server we want, because notebook is a very high critical piece of software. So when you do a release, you impact a lot of users. In a way, we have broken a bit the dependency on the notebook, and we are much more free to do what we want on the server. We can evolve with the kernels and so on much faster.
Yeah, and does that have, I guess it depends, right? Like you were saying, the server extensions being very different, but does that have an effect on jupyterlab extensions that you see coming, or are they two separate? Yeah. Okay,
No,
well, that's good.
I mean,
think.
it's the same name, but it's completely different.
Yeah, but does the Jupyter server existing change anything on the jupyterlab extension side, or probably not, because people probably aren't interacting with that part like that directly if they're building from jupyterlab?
No, if you build a jupyterlab server side extension, you don't impact the Jupyter server as such. So there is no impact.
That's good news, I think, right? That's not another thing for people to worry about breaking with that transition, but that's amazing work. Ani, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Eric. Eric, if I was using React, how easy would the transition be? Would I even have to do these kinds of rebuilding things, or would I just do a simple wrapper around a React widget that acted as like the main home component?
Well, completely transparent. Once again, we don't change anything in terms of TypeScript.
Right.
You can just use the libraries you love. Is it React or is it Vue or whatever? The migration from 2 to 3 does not change that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but well, maybe I cannot demo that right now, but while preparing the demo I'm gonna give soon, well, remember last time I used a library, which
Material
was
UI.
Yeah, a React library which was displaying a counter. And we discussed what library we need to choose, or we can assess that it is a good library and so on. And that library was working well in jupyterlab 2, right? Because I showed you that. I tried to reuse that library in jupyterlab 3, and it was in a way breaking the Babel loader.
Interesting.
And yes, because I picked that library, but it was a very old library. Probably the React that was pulled was too old. So at some point, everything is done and it is transparent, but still, because we upgrade Webpack and so on, I think it was breaking at the Webpack level. You may face some glitch. I mean, it's always like that when you upgrade from a major upgrade, because Webpack 5, which is used to load those extensions in a dynamic way, I mean, it's really a breaking change. If you look at how it is built, there is a lot which has changed. Normally, it does not impact the user or the developer, but it could. You never know.
Cool.
So, yeah, we've been talking a little bit about this impacting users versus developers, which I find really important. As a designer, I'm always asking people the user impact question, so it's great that y'all brought that up on your own. Is there anything else people want to note with that? I know we've touched on it, but it sounds like mostly this is something that developers are going to potentially notice a big change if they are working on any part where they need to interact with some of these 3.0 changes, but users, it seems like not so much, right? It's just that things maybe are running faster or are running better, but not really a different experience. Does that sound correct?
Well, I think we brought the single mode view, and Gonzalo brought the internalization. So maybe you can have a word on that. And single mode view is something which tries to mimic or approach the classical notebook. This was also a high demanded feature from the user.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's some of the features are more user facing. Does anyone have any? Oh, go ahead, Gonzalo.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's say that usually when you go from a 2 to a 3, let's say a major version, you're expecting things to break. I mean, you should not, but it's the moment when you are allowed to break them as a project or as a developer. So there are also like a few issues or extra details that will need to be addressed in the following weeks as more users and developers are adopting 3.x and enterprises, and is how they can provide extensions to different parts. For instance, one of the active issues that is currently that I have seen currently being discussed by some of the other contributors is the ability to add different modes to the code mirror, and how code mirror is exposed within jupyterlab so that users and developers can extend it or even attach key bindings to it. For instance, Vim, which is also like a very highly requested feature for a long time. And with this process, actually a work that Eric started, someone else took over and is completing it, and he has faced some issues with how the code mirror, let's say, interface is being exposed for this extension. Maybe I'll quick word. Code mirror is basically the open source editor that jupyterlab and Notebook uses. So when you're writing on a cell in a notebook, that's a code mirror editor. So with as many cells as you have, you will have many code mirror instances in there. And that's probably a good segue to some of the things that will land in 3.1 for performance, which Eric has been working nonstop for the past months for the 2.x branch. So that's something that will come also for 3.1. And it's going to be a great improvement for people working with large notebooks and heavy output cells. So that's also a nice thing to mention. So yeah, so basically to summarize that line, there are going to be breaks somewhere along the line for extension developers. And some of them will just keep up appearing as we keep moving and pushing forward 3.x. So you will need to stay tuned for this series just to know more about the gotchas and the things that you need to do to keep things working.
Yeah, there is an upgrade script. Sorry, Annie. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that no matter what, I think the 2.0, 3.0 upgrade is going to be supported really well. So I'm not too worried about things breaking actually, from an architectural perspective. Just as someone who's been following all the GitHub comments and discussions that have been going on, just not commenting on them, just lurking around. But you're right, Gonzalo, in that I do expect things to break. But I think that the overall architecture seems a lot better in 3.0 for future extension and extensibility writing.
That's great. I think this might be a good time to move to the demo if anyone doesn't have, or if anyone doesn't have anything else they want to say. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds great. I'm super excited to see this
Awesome.
demo, actually. So I'm here.
Me too. Thank you for preparing it, Eric.
Awesome.
Great. So what are we seeing? What are we seeing today?
Eric, you're on mute, by the way, I think.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, first I'm going to show you quickly the difference between jupyterlab 2 and 3. So as a developer or a user, you need Node.js and Python on your machine. So with jupyterlab 2, what you have is you develop an extension just like we've done last time, and you need Node.js and you need Python for sure, but as a user, you need also Node.js to install that an extension. With jupyterlab 3, you see these blocks move away. As a user, well, actually, this is not what I wanted to show you. As a user, you just need this. So you just need Python. And this allows jupyterlab 3 to install what we call dynamic extensions. So you have like front-end and server extensions. Okay, so here, what I have here is a snippet which creates for a developer and Conda environment. And here you see I need Python, I need Trim to push what I have done to PyPy. I do need Node.js, and I need a cookie cutter, just like last time. I do have another Conda environment for the user where I do not need Node.js, and this is a big difference. The user does not need Node.js at all. So how do you do to build the extension? Just like before, it does not change. You clone jupyterlab, and you install jupyterlab on your machine. And then you create the skeleton of the extension with a cookie cutter. And in that case, you need to check out the branch 3.0 to be sure the cookie cutter builds what needs to be done for the version 3. And there, this changes. Before, you did not have to type that command, but with jupyterlab 3, what you do jupyterlab extension develop, and you say override, just because, well, this is an option. But this is what will link all the extensions to, well, the extension you have done to the main jupyterlab. So I'm gonna do that here.
The cool thing about this, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
At least to me, this is looking really similar to what we discussed last time, right? There's little details that you're changing for 3.0, but a lot of it's kind of the same step by step. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, we're using the same cookie cutter. We use a different version, but the result is quite different. And maybe I can show here.
I'm also really excited just adding that I don't need to use Node anymore. Not that I don't like Node, but from the user side, I don't have to use npm to actually deploy my server extension, it doesn't look like, which is kind of nice.
Yeah,
or
sure.
Actually just my extension in general. So that looks really cool as well. no more external services, no more like extra services on top of like what I actually just want to do.
Yeah, well, you don't need as a user to have Node. As a developer, you still need Node, of course, because you need to install those Node modules.
Right. But from a
And
deployment perspective, it's just a pip deploy now, right?
yes, I'm going to come to that just after. Indeed, when you have built your extension, you have a pip package and you push to PyPy. And the user just simply does a pip install.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And the user doesn't need Node anymore, right? Previously in 2.0, the user needed Node as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it does not need Node anymore.
Oh, that's
No.
amazing. That's like removing a large dependency.
Sure. Yeah. So the cookie cutter will generate, for example, a setup.py. You give the name of the project, and it will define any path or any data file which is needed. So this was not there in jupyterlab 2. This is a difference. And you have that module also, the Python module with the init PI and version PI, which is generated for you. So what I've done that, I'm going to try again to do, but very easy. And what you have after, jupyterlab extension list. That's it. We have the quirkshop glabs 3 React, which is linked in the folder where I am. So just like before, this works. And this one is also quite interesting because we have the pip list. So it's not only a jupyterlab extension, it's also a Python package. And we have that quirkshop glabs 3 React Python package available. Okay, so if I want to deploy that in jupyterlab, I do glpm watch. So it's going to build. And because I have linked that extension to the jupyterlab, I can now launch this. In watch mode. It's going to take a bit of time, just like it needs to build and looking at the files.
Right, that makes sense. Is it?
Okay, here we go.
I can hear a computer working really hard.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was Annie's fan that was going turbo.
I wish.
Oh, yeah. So this doesn't show what I wanted here. I was supposed to have a menu.
Yeah,
Right.
good old reliable JLP, like the watch mode,
Yeah.
is always like messy.
I've never actually had a good experience with watch mode personally. I just do a build every single time.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to move on and just to tell you what you need to do to push. And maybe I'm going to stop sharing screen, try to fix that, and we can move on. Put it back. So, yeah. So, assuming we have something which works, we do a setup PI here just to build the Python package, and then we push to Python, right? Well, now I'm going to show you how I can use that. So I'm going to quirkshop as a user.
So are we switching from making a JupyterLab 3 extension to using an existing one?
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, because I have pushed here to the PyPy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see.
And what is Twine, actually, Eric? I'm not familiar with the Twine tool.
Well, it's just a Python package to push your Python library to PyPy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the official library to do it.
Okay.
Uh, it's it's relatively new. Like there were ways like is the recommended way because it provides a secure connection to the PyPI server. So you may have seen other ways of using it in the past, but nowadays you should probably be using Twine
Twine.
all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, if you look at, I'm going to show you PyPy probably here.
And perhaps I'm stating the obvious, but pushing to PyPy is new, right? Like that's a 3.0. That's previously
Yeah,
was all the
before it
NPM,
was,
right?
you were pushing to NPM.
Yeah.
So NPM
Yeah.
is something else.
Yeah, you would typically push to npm.org. So you'd have
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
both.
making sure we call that out.
Yeah,
for
and you
people.
typically, if you're writing a server extension, you'd have to also deploy it on PyPI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This package, Python package, is now on PyPI. I've pushed it a few hours ago. So release history 6 hours ago. And now, as a user, what I can do is simply installing that Python package. And I do like this.
So I know we discussed a little bit how pushing right to a different place is going to affect the user, right? That the users don't necessarily need Node to use these extensions anymore. But is there anything else that changes with pushing it somewhere else from a user side?
Well, from the user, it's just another command to use. Instead of doing npm install, it will do pip install.
Actually, now that this is probably a segue, I'll jump in there just because this is something that is open for exploration, but it's still not ready there. So basically, right now, JupyterLab is able to load, let's say, assets, let's say JS files and CSS files and all that, that would provide a specific extension on JupyterLab. On top of that, this new way of packaging these assets and putting them in the right place so that JupyterLab knows where to look for them is basically the simplified version of what's going on. But we could potentially also have JupyterLab have an extension point to a specific CDN server that provide these assets already compiled to normal JavaScript and CSS. And we could directly load this extension from another site on the internet without actually going through the process of installing things. So this also opens a new way of maybe the extension manager of JupyterLab, like disabling is actually not really installing anything, but it's just pointing to the assets hosted on a server. That could be your own private server or a CDN network or whatever. So a bit of a side
So
parenthesis here, but opening the door for very exciting things.
would I be able to host it on something like Unpackage?
Sorry?
Would I be able to host it on something like Unpackage, where like I can just import an npm package today?
I don't know if that would work,
Okay.
but I don't know much about this, but this is something that I overheard in a conversation. So I think
Yeah,
it's an interesting way of looking at extensions also.
Yeah, that
So
sounds super
for
good.
Python, so just to close that thought, basically we could have any package manager just from any language, just package these assets and put them in the right place, and that's what we are currently doing. That's what pip is doing. That's what conda is doing. Just take all these assets that are ready and put them in the right place so jupyterlab can load them. Now, who is in charge of putting those assets in the right place? I mean, the sky's the limit. We could still use Node to do that. We could use pip, which makes life super easy for a lot of the community behind Jupyter. But we could also use a content delivery network and serve those assets directly. We probably would need to do some tweaks on the Jupyter Lab code base just to be able to handle those, but they will be very minimal. So that's also an interesting approach to probably many companies using Jupyter Lab internally.
So what I'm hearing from this is that right now this change may not have a huge effect on development or users, but that it could, right? That this is opening up a lot of doors. Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you for elaborating. How's it going, Eric?
Yeah, I doesn't go well. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna try to fix that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Has anyone else, I know Eric's kind enough to do the demo for us, but has anyone else had similar kind of 3.0 extension stuff, or probably not yet, right? People still working on making 3.0 instead.
I'm going to go ahead and actually try to port my extension to a 3.0 extension after this talk. So I think it's something that I'll look into, but currently it's just in 2.0 because I think most people currently are using 2.0 and a lot of people aren't on the bleeding edge just yet. And like I said, in the next couple of months when people do get onto 3.0, I'll have a release ready as well. But I'm glad that a lot of these decisions that were made, it seems like it will take me a very short amount of time to get from 2.0 to 3.0, especially because my extension is written mostly in a different language and it's just kind of sourced by jupyterlab and uses the ecosystem to talk to Lumina underneath the covers. So I don't think it will be too difficult, hopefully, knock on wood.
That's good news. I hope other people have that experience too. I know updating has been a problem in the past.
Yeah. I'm also super excited to see Vue make an entryway into React extension, or excuse me, JupyterLab extension development because of its kind of community-driven open source philosophy. And also because a lot of people don't like writing JSX, which is React specific, but I'm glad that both will work in kind of conjunction. So it will be like a, hey, whichever one you really prefer or are versed with, you can write in. It doesn't really matter to us as long as you're able to communicate to our platform.
Okay, I'm back on track and maybe I can quickly share.
Please do.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. It's
Super
always
excited.
very difficult to get this stuff working live.
Especially
super
live
appreciative.
demos just suck, yeah.
Yeah, but live demos are just real life, so this is what really goes on anyway.
I mean,
on
it's
our
a
day-to-day
meme.
basis.
It's a
So
meme.
let's be honest.
No, and I think that's really important, right? That, I don't know, for anyone watching this, if you've had these problems, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, maybe, right? It's good to see.
I think every time I do the demo, I change my content environment. I should not do that. I have to replay it and so on. Anyway, so this extension adds a quirkshop menu, just like last time. So this is the counter I showed you before, and this is what is shown in the log. And once again, I can try to change the log here. So glabs 3. The file is changed here. Now if I refresh, it doesn't. You see glabs 3. So this is the watch is back. If I change the console message, you see a change here. And this is JavaScript, but this is packed in a Python package pushed to PyPy. To come back to what Gonzalo was discussing, I'm gonna here activate the Chrome network tab. I'm gonna clear that one, and I'm gonna show you all the JavaScript which are pulled from the server. And this is what is really a feature of Webpack 5. You have all those vendors. You see here, vendor, main, and so on. But if I ask for the entry, which is called here remote entry, I don't know if you can read that, but I'm going to open it in a new tab. So look, I go from localhost, I ask lab extension, and I ask quirkshop glab react, which is the name of my extension. And I ask the remote entry, and what Gonzalo was saying is that all those artifacts, all those assets can be deployed on any server. And this is a Webpack 5 feature. You can load any remote entry you want, and that remote entry is packaged. And actually, this is my extension code. If you look here, I can look at console log. I guess it should be somewhere. But this is all the code which is pulled. Maybe it is in the JavaScript, but Webpack will create that remote entry and we load all the JavaScript files. And this is what we call dynamic extension. You don't need to build the full asset. You can load dynamically those remote entries, and Webpack 5 does it for you.
That's awesome. That's really cool to see. Thank you. So then you did, from last time that we talked, you had that quirkshop extension set up for 2.0. So you actually did this whole process to get it ready for 3.0.
Yeah, actually, I created with a cookie cutter the skeleton, and I moved the definitions. It was a package JSON definitions, and I moved the code to that new extension. I did not use the upgrade script because there is another way to do is to upgrade your extension with Python jupyterlab.upgrade extension. I have not done that. I think maybe it is something I can try, but for example, it does not work if you have server components. That upgrade script will not work if you have server-side in your extension. So you have to do some manual cleaning, and it's not automated yet.
Great. I know we're getting ready to wrap up a little bit, watching the time. Do we have any audience questions? I'm not seeing any, but asking Ani too.
I
Make sure we
do
leave
not
time
see
for that.
any that are coming in.
Awesome. Thank you.
I will let you know if any come in.
Thank you.
But if the audience does have questions, I think now's the time, is what Isabella was saying as well.
Yeah, I want to make sure we leave time for that. So
yeah,
please feel free to weigh in. I definitely have more questions, though. No worries there. We talked a little bit too, and I know Ani mentioned also in terms of like upgrading or not. Oh, questions?
Oh, Santa Claus joined the call.
From Tony?
Hi!
Hi.
Hi! I really wanted to thank you all for that. Eric, I love these heroic demos that you've done during these things. Like, it's, and to Gonzalo's point, like, when we're doing this, like, we're talking with code, right? You can't separate the two sometimes, and sometimes there's just these barriers in communication. That was super good. The other thing was, I really wanted to say how awesome it was, the brunt of work that the developers are taking on so that the users can benefit from this. This seems like a challenging change. Any major version seems like a challenging change, but bless you all for doing this for the users. I feel like it's going to make life a lot better.
Well, and I was thinking that too, even from the developer, like from an extension developer standpoint, it seems like there has, like, to have that appearance that not a lot has changed in terms of the process is extremely impressive. And at least in my experience, to have something that people don't necessarily notice when they work with it has changed takes an enormous amount of work from a lot of people. to have that kind of fluidity. So this is amazing to be able to show that off. And yes, thank you for doing all these demos. You keep being our demo hero every time. Thank you.
The other thing that's going to rock is making binders. Because if you make binders with a PyPy, it's so much faster than all of the other ones, right? So if you can just install your extensions without having to do the jupyterlab post build and stuff like that, I mean, even making like interactive computing experiences on Jupyter hubs, like this is going to make making science content a lot easier, it seems.
That's a great thing to call out. I didn't even think about it in terms of binder. Thank you.
Absolutely. Do you have some numbers, Tony, in terms of how much would this entail in terms of gain? Like we're talking about minutes to seconds, or?
So we've got a big binder called FAM on Deathbeds, and that one with Conda and the post build, and it's got about 25 extensions. It takes upwards of like 20 or so minutes to do. You add Mamba in there, it's half the time. But then if you don't have to do the extension building, I mean, it's just so much faster. It's going to improve that efficiency significantly.
I also wonder if we're just going to be able to do imports over the web, like Gonzalo mentioned earlier. You don't even have to install extensions per se. If they're like not a server extension, you just can hit enable and disable, so there's just no build time.
Unless it's a super heavy Java
Yeah.
script file, it's going. I mean, that's something that also we are looking forward. I will not make any promises or commitments, but definitely during the 3.x lifetime, it's something that we will explore, because it's like you said, we would definitely get rid of the install thing. It's just enable, disable, and start working.
All of this reminds me of like the classic notebook past. I mean, I used to write notebooks that would just have JavaScript embedded in there, and you'd have D3 at the top level. Webpack didn't hide everything down, but like, I wonder if we'll be able to get to this like same level of hackability, because it seems like JupyterLab's becoming more accepting of JavaScript executing arbitrary things.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be that insecure, but but why not?
Whenever you're running code from the internet, though, right?
True story.
That's great. Thank you for this great discussion, everyone. You still have a little time to talk. I just didn't want to force it. Is there, actually, Ani, you mentioned, right, people don't upgrade right away, which is normal, but is there anything that y'all know that would say like, oh, wait to upgrade, or pros and cons of upgrading to 3.0 or not, that people want to cover real quick?
Well, it depends. It depends. Well, there are many facets to it. I guess you have, are you like a single user, or are you a company or a college using a hub to serve many, many students? It also depends on, are you using like vanilla JupyterLab, or are you heavily invested in a specific extensions? And also, like, are these extensions internal to your company, or all these like open source projects that are keeping up with the pace of 3.x releases? There are many moving parts, but I guess that for the single user that uses JupyterLab in their day-to-day work as a single user, running it from their local machine or maybe on binders, I would say definitely try it. It's worth doing it, and it's worth trying it. If you're a company or a college serving many users depending on specific extensions, you will probably not be able to do it because your extension might not be available yet, and because there is always like an inertia. The bigger the institution, the bigger the company, the bigger the body, it's going to have an inertia to move to a new thing. So I guess it's a matter of size and scale, and how eager you are to test the latest.
There's a time element to throw in there too, right? Like, if this does save you half the time, and you've got tens or 50s of developers working on these things, and they're rebuilding extensions, and it starts to save you half the time. And as an individual user, organizations are going to have these benefits of efficiency, and you also, as an individual user, need to be able to save half the time too. So it's foolish not to get things done in half the time. Your science shows up quicker.
That's a good point. thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. Particularly, thank you, Eric, for once again preparing a demo for us. But also, thank you for the great commentary. It's awesome to hear what people are thinking about this, and particularly people with different expertise than me. So thank you for having me also asking all the silly questions as I do. But great.
They're not silly. I promise that I will take the burden of demos in the upcoming workshops from Eric back.
Wow, are we just gonna play hot potato? Is that what's gonna happen, Gonzalo?
Yeah.
More of a
I'm going to
share. We
take
can
the-
go with the word share.
I'm taking the potato and then I'm going to throw it in your face.
I know you are. That's why I should prepare.
Well, I guess we'll have more Quirkshop love next week or in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
Super excited. Thank you for the discussion, everyone. Like Isabella said, this
Thanks,
is exciting.
everyone.
I'm excited to see
Thanks
the
for
3.0
the-
release.
Cameo at the end, Tony. Welcome back.
Yeah, we missed you.
Yeah.
We have.
Great.
All right. Talk to you guys in a bit.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Thank
See you
you.
next
All right.